Andrew, thanks so much for joining us.
Keith, thanks for having me. Man, like I feel like we've known each other for a very long time, at least 15 years here, if not more. I love getting back together. It's been too long in my view. So thanks for having us back.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about Jellyfish and all the great things that have been going on at the company and bring everyone up to speed. But if someone's not familiar with the company, let's talk about Jellyfish and what you guys do.
We're based in Boston formally. About 60% of our employees are in the Boston area. The company's about 7 years old, but Jellyfish is what we call an engineering management platform, right? Now, if you exclude the marketing jargon, really what we do is provide visibility by connecting the business to the engineering team. So I grew up as a software engineer and engineering manager, engineering leader, and then learned kind of in the business seat how disconnected engineering teams are from the business side of things. And what does that mean? It means that companies are just making bad decisions around where to invest their dollars, like making sure the team is successful in all the ways and making the business successful in the ways because they just don't understand what's working and what's not, right? So we're in the business of connecting those two things together by bringing in the data that the engineers are already using in ways the business can understand. So tying those two pieces together. Now, the teams today, we're based in Post Office Square, about a couple hundred people. You and I were just talking a second ago that I would say we're really lucky. And I use the word lucky as in founder speak for two things. One, to be thankful because the world's been pretty hard in the last few years. And lucky also to say, like, lucky, the word for founders is and entrepreneurs, it's a timing concept. There are things that are out of our control, right? And so we've been lucky in the sense and thankful for the growth we've actually seen in the last few years.
And yeah, when you launched Jellyfish, it was perfect timing because Mark Andreessen was famous for saying software is eating the world. So every company need to think like a software company. So let's give some customer examples of the use cases for Jellyfish.
We have several hundred customers. Example customers might be something like Five9 or Encino or Priceline or PagerDuty. These are in some ways interesting because they're bigger than the customers we've been touching before. These are companies that are crossing into household names, but they are still software and technology companies, and they have large numbers of software companies. When we started the company years ago, we used to make a trite comment to the VCs, which is like, well, software at the world, every company is a potential software customer for Jellyfish, right? Like that's in our TAM. I think we're starting to see some of that play out though, as we kind of start growing up and working with some of these larger companies. I think a few years ago, we've been working with largely venture-backed companies, but I think much more of our customer base now is actually on the public software side. So it's been, it's been a cool few years to kind of see the evolution in that product. And the people that are users and buyers in that space would be the executives and leadership and management of that team, right? That actually is trying to connect the business from the engineering teams together.
Jellyfish has been publishing a report every year called the State of Engineering Management. So, what were the key findings from this year's report?
Yeah, so we have a really interesting seat, right? Like for a company that's been 7 years old, we've gotten to see how the engineering industry kind of evolves. And because we're working with these hundreds of customers, we have a lot of visibility of what's working, what's not across this. And so we have our core data that we see from like watching all our customers move. But on top of it, we actually do a survey on an annual basis where we reach out to hundreds of engineering professionals. And this includes kind of CTO, VP, executive types, all the way to engineers, and just really on a regular basis, on an annual basis, see what they're thinking, what's changing in that space. And I think there's like some really kind of interesting stuff this year, right? So a lot of it is actually like it is a time of fundamental change. That is a thing that you can hear all the way through here, right? So some of it's economic, but there's this theme actually of this AI thing happening, right? All right. I think if you've been paying attention, there's an AI thing happening.
Just a little bit.
And so we've been asking folks, like, what do they think about that? Right. And so broadly speaking, about two-thirds of, our customer base, like, and of these surveys are actually using some form of AI here of engineering organizations. Now, the interesting part is actually when we ask the executives, like, has our teams fully used it? It's like 76%. Right. Now, if you ask the engineers, they're like 50% is actually using it. So it's like this really interesting juxtaposition where you're like, you both are in the same company, but like you're not clearly talking to each other in that space. So, and I have to go back and ask why, right? So on one sense, like, look, it is a period of change. I mean, the last few years have been crazy, right? We've gone through economic crises, we've gone through pandemics, we've gone through technology changes like AI, we've gone through just changes through the world and organizations here. So it's not surprising there's a lot of, fear is scary, change is scary, right? There's fear in there. And I think the other part of it though is if you don't reconcile that, like you're gonna have bigger issues coming around. Like if three-quarters of the team thinks you're doing this and 50% thinks you're doing that, at some point, like that will get reconciled. And it won't be pretty when that actually gets reconciled. But I understand why, right? Because you got the executive folks thinking about it from the business side, like, I read all this stuff. It must be great. Let's go do this, right? And the engineers who are actually using this stuff and they're touching it and finding value in certain ways, and there's some fear in other ways, but it's not like together yet in that space. And so when I look at a report like this, it helps me kind of understand what's actually happening in this industry. And what's actually, it also teaches us to provide insight in that part of it. So because we launched a Copilot dashboard recently to actually help companies understand like what group of people are using this and like what is it doing to them? Is it making them faster, slower? Are their jobs changing, right? Providing insight to try to bridge that gap, right? Like not just do a gut feel of like it must be cool and great, but like no, let's look empirically what's actually changing there. Right. So like those are things that we see as we kind of look across the survey, the report, and our customer base.
Now, you mentioned that Jellyfish has been growing, you've been adding to the team. So, what's the culture like? What's it like to work there?
Culture is this funny question, right? No, because I think deep down we all know culture is vividly important, but it's actually hard to put words to it. I think I think there's a couple things. I think there's like, number one, you have to enjoy going to work, right? So like I think culture has to be something that like we're gonna spend a lot of time together, like make sure that like it's enjoyable in everyone's way there. But at the same time, this is a business and we're trying to actually make wins happen. So I think it's a space where we actually are trying to accomplish business goals. We're trying to innovate. We're trying to like help our customers. We're trying to grow things, right? But at the same time, do it in an enjoyable manner. And there's a juxtaposition across there. Maybe the fact that I'm wearing this silly Hawaiian shirt actually says something about culture too, which is also we don't take ourselves too seriously, right? Like this is a journey, it's a startup. Like we are learning as we go, and inspiring each other along the way too, right? So I think those are all thematic things that you'll hopefully hear. Um, but I think the best way to know culture is to actually meet people, right? And as I talk to, your audience, I think you can read things that companies say, but I think culture is best expressed by the team and I'm proud of our team. And so, I think I would say they're all great people, and I always learn from each of us, anybody in the organization. So I actually think that for those at some point meeting Jellyfish folks, the culture question asked by the person in front of you, like, do you want to spend time with them? Or are you learning from them? Like, that's the simple answer.
So, top tier talent, they always have options for their career. So, why is now the ideal time to consider Jellyfish?
Well, I think Jellyfish should be on the radar for job seekers because I think we're doing something new, right? I sometimes meet folks and I'm like, well, do you want to do in a mature market and just do the same thing again, or do you want to blaze new trails? I'm going to readily admit we haven't had everything figured out, but that's the fun part, right? At least for me and most of the people that are here, it's a form of learning, right? Because I love new challenges. It doesn't mean we're going to win every day. We all aspire to and work hard to do it, but it's that journey and victory that you actually do it that actually is a big part of it. And so I hope that we win, that we learn and we build relationships along the way. And that like we look back and you're like, that is something I'm proud of. And I think like those are things that we care about. So people that actually should come here are people that want that. And of course, we serve in a developer tool space. I think we're actually doing something that's actually very germane to companies today as every company becomes a software company. And in an environment that we are thankful for, the fact that we're able to thrive in this economic environment, like I think we're in a good place to be. So that's why people should come over here.
Well, if you are interested in exploring opportunities at Jellyfish, you need to go to their company page on VentureFizz, which has all their job listings. Go to venturefizz.com/jellyfish to see their jobs listed there. Andrew, thanks so much for taking the time to bring us up to speed on all the great things happening at Jellyfish.
Hey, thanks for having me being here. It's always great.